I never thought it would come to this. I always believed that my marriage to Sarah was solid. We had a comfortable life together in our small town. I was the typical husband working a steady job while she managed our home. We had dated for 5 years before tying the knot, and for the first few years everything seemed picture perfect. But lately, things had started to feel off. It began with the little things. Sarah used to say good night without fail as we'd crawl into bed. But those simple words had started to dwindle. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just tired or stressed from work. But deep down, I felt a nagging sense of unease. I caught her staring at her phone more often, her smile a little too wide when she thought I wasn't watching. The late nights out with friends became more frequent, and she'd return home with a perfume I didn't recognize, one that was cloyingly sweet and not at all like her usual scent. One Friday night, after a long week, I was scrolling through my phone when I noticed a text bubble pop up on Sarah's screen. It was from a contact, named Jess, but the message was from a number I didn't recognize. I had been minding my own business, but my curiosity got the better of me. I leaned over and glanced at it. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. You know I miss you." My heart dropped. My mind raced. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting and that it could be a misunderstanding, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I waited for her to come out of the bathroom, and when she did, I was already on high alert. "Hey, who's Jess?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked at me, a flash of panic crossed her face, but just as quickly she plastered on that charming smile of hers. "Oh, just some friend from work. You know how it is." I could see the lie in her eyes, but I didn't push it further. Instead, I decided to keep a closer watch. The next few days were agonizing. I replayed those words over and over in my head. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had to dig deeper. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I needed to know the truth for my peace of mind. So I started doing something I never thought I would: snooping. I went through her things, looking for any clue that would confirm my suspicions. I found her planner tucked away in a drawer, filled with late-night meetings and coffee dates with Jess. My gut twisted at the sight of it. I felt sick as I flipped through the pages, finding more evidence, little lies stacked on top of one another. Each note was like a dagger to my heart. Finally, it all came to a head when I found a receipt for a hotel in the city, dated for the very night Sarah had gone out with friends. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. No more waiting, I needed answers now. That night I confronted her when she got home. The moment she stepped through the door, I could see it in her eyes. She knew. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the storm of emotions brewing within me. She took a deep breath, and I could see her preparing to spin another web of lies, but I wasn't going to let her off the hook this time. "I found the hotel receipt. Who were you with?" Her face went pale, and for a moment the strong facade crumbled. I can explain," she stuttered, but I wasn't having any of it. "Explain what? That you've been cheating on me. That you've lied to my face for who knows how long." The anger surged within me, a mix of betrayal and heartbreak. I was furious, but more than that, I was devastated. Her explanations were a jumble of excuses, none of which made sense. "You don't understand, it's not what you think," she yelled, but I couldn't listen anymore. I felt like my whole world was collapsing. The woman I had trusted with everything had shattered that trust in an instant. I watched as she tried to deflect the blame onto me, claiming I had been distant, that I didn't pay enough attention to her. It was infuriating. I had been the one putting in the effort while she was the one betraying me. As the arguments escalated, I could feel something inside of me snapping. I had loved this woman, but suddenly, all I felt was rage mixed with a deep, aching sadness. This was not the life I had signed up for, and I was left reeling from the fallout of her betrayal. And so, the emotional journey began. I was angry, crushed, and devastated all at once. I had always thought I was strong enough to handle anything in life, but this was a different kind of pain. It was as if someone had ripped my heart out and stomped on it. I needed to figure out what to do next. How could I face my friends and family? What would happen to our life together? I felt lost and betrayed, and it was hard to see a way forward. But I knew I had to make a decision, the kind that would determine the rest of my life. As I sat there, wrestling with my emotions, I knew I could no longer ignore the gravity of the situation. The question lingered in the air. What was I going to do about Sarah? In the days that followed the confrontation, I felt like I was living in a fog. My mind was racing, and I was trying to piece together everything that had happened. The shock of Sarah's betrayal was overwhelming, and anger coursed through my veins like a potent drug. I oscillated between wanting to scream at her until my throat was hoarse and wanting to curl up on the couch and disappear. I was getting used to the silence that filled our home. It was deafening. The laughter we once shared over dinner was replaced by an awkward tension that felt suffocating. I busied myself with work, throwing myself into projects to distract from the gnawing pain that was festering inside me. But no matter how hard I tried to focus, my thoughts kept drifting back to her. I remember one particular evening after a long day. I got home, and she was already sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. The sight of her made my stomach turn. I wanted to hurl the remote at the wall, scream, and demand answers. But instead I just stood there, a silent observer of the life we once had. "Are you going to say anything?" she finally asked, her voice dripping with that familiar dismissive tone. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "What do you want me to say, Sarah? What more is there to discuss? You've already made your choice." She rolled her eyes, leaning back into the couch. "You're being dramatic. We can talk this through. It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I repeated, incredulous. "A mistake isn't booking a hotel room and telling your husband you're out with friends. A mistake is spilling coffee on your shirt. This was a choice and you made it." She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. The words were like salt in an open wound, and I was done letting her manipulate the discussion. I had given her chances to be honest, and she had squandered every one of them. But deep down, I still wrestled with my emotions. The love I had felt for her didn't just disappear. It lingered, a ghost haunting the edges of my heart. I still cared for her, and that made it all the more painful. However, I also felt a surge of determination. Take control of my life again. I didn't want to be the victim in this story. I decided to talk to my close friend Mike the next day. I needed someone to confide in, someone who could provide a different perspective. Mike had always been there for me throughout the ups and downs in my life. After work, I met him at a local bar, desperately needing to unload the weight on my shoulders. "Dude, you look terrible," Mike said as he slid into the booth across from me. "Thanks," I replied dryly. "I appreciate that." I told him everything, the texts, the hotel, the confrontation. As I talked, I could feel the weight of my words lifting just a little. "I don't know what to do, man. I feel lost." "Have you thought about what you really want?" he asked, tapping his fingers on the table as he listened intently. "I guess I just want to know if it's all worth fighting for," I admitted. "But every time I look at her, I see the lies." "You could kick her to the curb," he suggested. "You deserve better, man, you cow. Just forgive and forget," something like that. I found myself nodding, but deep down, I was still battling those conflicting emotions. I didn't want to throw away our entire life together, but I also didn't want to be the guy who accepted betrayal without a fight. "Maybe you should think about what you truly want," Mike said. "If she's not willing to put in the effort, then what's the point?" His words resonated with me. I had already done the hard work to invest in our marriage, but now it felt one-sided. I needed to make a decision, confront Sarah again, and see if she was willing to fight for us, or cut my losses and move on. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, staring up at the ceiling. I felt as if I were trapped in a terrible dream I couldn't wake up from. I missed the times when everything felt simple and uncomplicated. The nights spent lying in bed together, whispering sweet nothings and planning our future. Those memories clashed violently with the reality I was faced with now, a reality filled with betrayal and deceit. I resolved to talk to Sarah again. I needed to confront her one last time, and this time, I would demand the truth without any of her usual excuses. I was tired of feeling like a fool, and I wanted her to realize the gravity of what she had done. The next evening, when she walked in the door, I felt a surge of adrenaline. We would have this conversation, and I wouldn't back down. No more glossing over the hurt or pretending that everything was okay. It was time for her to see that I was no longer the naive husband who would accept her lies without question. "Sarah," I said, my voice firm as she dropped her bag by the door. "We need to talk." Her expression shifted and I could see the nervousness in her eyes. I was determined to get to the bottom of this and I wasn't going to let her brush me off again. This was it, the moment of truth. As I stood there, the tension in the air was palpable. I could feel my heart racing as I prepared myself for what was about to unfold. Sarah shifted her weight from one foot to the other, a telltale sign that she knew what was coming. "What now?" she asked, her tone sharp, defensive. "I want you to be honest with me this time," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "No more excuses or half-truths. I deserve to know what's going on." She rolled her eyes, but I could see the slight tremor in her fingers as she fidgeted with her hair. "I told you I made a mistake. I thought I could handle it on my own." "Handle what?" I shot back, frustration boiling within me. "You're not making any sense. You think this is just something that can be brushed under the rug. You think our marriage can survive on 'I made a mistake.'" "Fine, I was seeing someone," she admitted, her voice rising. "Happy. I thought I could have both worlds. I thought you wouldn't notice. It was just supposed to be fun." The admission hit me like a brick wall. There it was, the truth, raw and painful. I felt my stomach drop. Every promise she had made, every moment of intimacy we shared felt like a cruel joke. Fun. You think cheating on your husband is fun? Is that what you call it? She stepped back, her hands held up defensively as if I were the aggressor. "You've been distant, you haven't been. Don't you dare turn this back on me. I've been working hard to keep this marriage afloat and you've been screwing someone else on the side. Do you even understand how much pain you've caused?" Her eyes darted away from mine, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of guilt, but it was quickly replaced by bitterness. "You don't get it. I needed someone who made me feel alive. You're always so focused on work you never have time for me. And you think that justifies what you did. You couldn't come to me and talk about it. You had to sneak around like a coward." The anger was boiling over and I was no longer able to keep it in check. "Coward? Look who's talking. You think this is easy for me. I made a choice, yes, but I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to lose this." She gestured around the room, the life we had built together. "Then why did you?" I asked. "Why not come to me and say that you were unhappy? I could have worked on it, but instead you chose to betray me. You chose someone else over our marriage. I try to reach out to you, but you're always too busy." She cried, her voice cracking. "I thought I could find what was missing. I thought it would make me feel better. By sleeping with another man. What kind of twisted logic is that?" I shot back, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. The pain was palpable now, a living entity between us, and I could barely breathe under the weight of it. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered, her voice softer now, vulnerable. "I thought it was just a fling." I shook my head, feeling a sense of disbelief. You didn't consider the consequences. You didn't think about how I would feel." "I was scared," she admitted, tears filling her eyes. "I didn't want to lose you, but I felt so alone. I never meant for it to happen like this. I can't keep doing this, Sarah. I can't keep having the same conversation over and over again. I don't even know who you are anymore." The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were the truth. The woman I had loved felt like a stranger now. "You have to understand it wasn't just about him," she said, her defenses crumbling. "It was about me feeling inadequate, lost. I thought maybe this would fill a void, but it didn't. It only made everything worse." Her admission hung in the air like a thick fog. I felt a flicker of empathy for her pain, but it was drowned out by my own. "You don't get to play the victim here, Sarah. You made your choices, and now we have to face the consequences." The silence that followed was deafening. My heart raced as I processed everything she had said. I stood there, torn between the love I once felt for her and the betrayal that had invaded our marriage. It felt like I was on a precipice, looking down into an abyss of uncertainty. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, trying to collect my thoughts. "I don't know, Sarah. I don't know if we can fix this. Trust is gone, and it's going to take a lot more than just words to rebuild it." "What do you want me to do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Honestly, I need some time to think. I can't make any decisions right now. Everything is too raw." I wanted to say more, to scream my pain out loud, but I couldn't find the words. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her guilt palpable. "Sorry doesn't change what you did," I retorted, realizing I was still holding on to that anger. "I need to step back and figure out what I want. I can't promise you anything." With that, I walked away, leaving her standing there, tears in her eyes, grasping at the remnants of a love that felt shattered. As I made my way to the bedroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at a crossroads. This was a defining moment in my life, and I had to choose my path carefully. I felt like an outsider in my own home, filled with doubts about whether to rebuild what was left or to walk away entirely. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest, but I knew that I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I had to find a way forward, whatever that might mean for us. The days turned into weeks, and the silence between Sarah and me felt like a chasm that couldn't be crossed. I had taken my time to think, to process what had happened. The emotional turmoil was still fresh, and I was constantly rewriting our history in my mind, examining every little detail. It was exhausting and painful, but I needed to confront the reality of our situation. I spent long hours at work, throwing myself into my projects to escape the turmoil at home. But every time I returned, the house felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. I had never thought I would feel so alone in a marriage. Sarah had tried to talk to me, but I had been distant, creating an invisible wall between us. I wasn't ready to engage. I didn't trust her, and every time she spoke, I felt the anger bubbling beneath the surface. One night I returned home later than usual. The office had dragged on for hours. I was exhausted and just wanted to collapse into bed, but as I walked through the front door, I noticed the smell of something cooking. My curiosity piqued as I followed the aroma into the kitchen. Sarah was standing there, stirring a pot, her hair tied back in a messy bun. She looked up when I walked in, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Hey, I thought I'd make your favorite," she said, trying to keep her tone light. I felt a pang in my chest at the sight of her. I had once loved her so deeply, and there she was, trying to reach out, but the anger and hurt were still too raw. "I'm not really hungry," I replied curtly, moving past her to grab a drink from the fridge. "Can we please talk?" she pleaded, her voice wavering. "I want to discuss what's next for us." I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment I had been avoiding. "What's next for us? Is that supposed to mean something? You've shattered my trust, and I don't know how to even begin to consider what's next." Her face fell at my words, but she didn't back down. "I know I messed up. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I just want a chance to explain and show you I can change. I'll do whatever it takes to make this work." "Change?" I scoffed. "You think words are enough? You think cooking dinner is going to magically erase the pain you've caused? You had your chance, Sarah. You chose someone else over me." "I know, and I regret it every day. I was selfish, but I want to fix this," she said, her voice pleading. "Please just give me a chance to prove it to you." My heart was a battleground, torn between the anger of her betrayal and the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a part of her that still wanted to make things right. "What do you expect me to do? Just forget everything and move on like nothing happened?" "No. I don't expect that at all," she cried, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I just want to work on it. I'm willing to go to counseling, to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship. I love you and I never meant to hurt you." Her words hung in the air, a mix of desperation and sincerity. I wanted to believe her, to cling to the love we had once shared, but the scars were still too deep. "Love isn't enough when trust is gone, Sarah. I need to think about what will make me happy, too." She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I understand. But please just think about it. I want to be better, and I want to show you that." That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, haunted by her words. I felt the weight of her pain and desperation, but I was still grappling with my own feelings. Could I really forgive her? Could I trust her again? As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a cycle of reflection. I started to consider counseling myself, not just for us, but for my own healing. I needed a space to voice my pain, to process everything that had happened. After a few sessions with a therapist, I began to understand my emotions better. I learned that healing wouldn't happen overnight, and I had to give myself grace as I navigated through the aftermath of betrayal. Despite my own journey, Sarah was still trying to reach out. I could see her making an effort. She attended therapy as well and began to open up about her own struggles, her feelings of inadequacy and loneliness. It was painful to listen to, but it also gave me a glimpse into her mind. I realized she was fighting her own demons, battling the insecurities that had led her to make those awful choices. But even with her efforts, I remained guarded. I had to protect myself, to think about what would truly make me happy. As the months went by, I faced the decision that loomed over me like a dark cloud. Could I really give our relationship another chance, or was it time to walk away for good? Eventually, I found myself at a turning point. After weeks of weighing my options, I realized that I didn't want to make a hasty decision. I needed clarity, not just for myself but for Sarah as well. I suggested to her that we could try going to couples therapy together. It was a step toward rebuilding, but it also felt like I was laying the groundwork for my own boundaries. The first session was tense. We sat across from each other in the therapist's office, the air heavy with unspoken emotions. The therapist encouraged us to express our feelings and define what we both wanted out of the relationship. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I was determined to be honest. "I'm scared," I admitted. "Scared that this will happen again, scared that I'll never be able to trust you like I once did." "I understand," she said, her eyes filled with sincerity. "I'm scared too, but I want to fight for us. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I can be better. I'm not the same person I was when I made those choices." The therapist guided us through the conversation, helping us navigate our emotions. Throughout the session, I saw glimpses of the woman I fell in love with, but the memories of betrayal still lingered at the edges of my mind. As we left the session, I felt a mix of hope and uncertainty. Maybe this was the first step toward healing, or maybe it was just prolonging the inevitable. But deep down, I knew I had to try. I wasn't fully ready to forgive, but I was willing to explore the possibility of rebuilding our relationship. In the weeks that followed, we continued attending therapy, gradually peeling back the layers of our relationship. I found strength in my own vulnerability and began to communicate my needs more openly. It was a slow and painful process, but it felt essential. And while the road was still rocky, I began to see a glimmer of hope for our future. But I also understood that this was just the beginning, and the journey ahead would require patience, commitment, and a whole lot of work. There was still a long way to go, but for the first time in months, I felt as if we were moving in a direction that had the potential to lead to healing. I was beginning to feel hopeful again. As the weeks rolled into months, Sarah and I continued our therapy sessions, slowly unearthing the layers of our relationship. I won't pretend it was easy. Each session felt like a grueling excavation of our emotional landscape, revealing not only the pain of betrayal, but also the buried feelings that had led us to this point. I was learning to express my fears, while Sarah was opening up about her insecurities in ways I had never seen before. One evening after a particularly intense session, I came home feeling raw but also a bit lighter. Sarah was already in the kitchen, attempting to whip up dinner. The familiar smell of spices filled the air, but tonight it felt different. It didn't reek of desperation or guilt. Instead, it carried a sense of warmth, a genuine effort to reconnect. "Hey," she greeted me, her smile tentative yet hopeful. "How was therapy?" "It was tough," I admitted, leaning against the counter as I tried to gather my thoughts. "We touched on a lot of issues we've been avoiding. It's hard to confront everything, you know." She nodded, her eyes reflecting understanding. "I get that, it's hard for me too, but I think it's helping. I feel like I'm really starting to understand why I did what I did." I really looked at her. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, the desire to change and heal. "Do you?" I asked, curious. "What have you learned?" It's like I was chasing something I thought I needed, but what I really wanted was to feel valued and noticed, she explained. "When I felt like I was losing you, I panicked. I didn't realize how far I was willing to go to fill that void." Her vulnerability struck a chord within me. The truth was hard to swallow, but I appreciated her honesty. "And the affair?" I pressed gently. "Did it fill that void?" "No," she replied, shaking her head. "It was a temporary distraction that only deepened the emptiness. I thought it would make me feel better, but it just made everything worse." We continued to talk, letting the conversation flow freely. It was the most open we had been in months, and I felt a flicker of the connection we had lost. Maybe we could still find a way back to each other. However, even as I felt that glimmer of hope, I knew we were still fragile. I couldn't fully trust her yet, and perhaps I never would again. But I was willing to try to see if we could rebuild what had been broken. One night, after a long day, I suggested we have a date night. It felt like a small step toward reconnecting. We decided to revisit the restaurant where we had shared so many memories. As we sat across from each other, I felt the familiar nervousness wash over me. This was uncharted territory, but I was willing to take the risk. "Remember our first date here?" Sarah asked, a soft smile breaking through the tension. I was so nervous. "Yeah, you dropped your fork 3 times," I chuckled. "I thought you were going to spill your drink all over the table." She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. It felt good to reminisce about those moments, to remember what it was like when everything was simpler. "I thought you were going to run for the hills after that," she admitted. "I almost did," I joked lightly, but there was a hint of truth behind my words. "But something kept drawing me back to you." As we talked and laughed over dinner, I could feel the ice between us slowly starting to thaw. We shared stories, reminisced about our adventures, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of normalcy. The flicker of hope I had felt earlier was growing into something more tangible. But as the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the unease lingering at the back of my mind. Was I really ready to open my heart to her again? Could I truly forgive her and move forward? I took a deep breath, knowing these questions would need answers. After dinner, we took a stroll through the park, hand in hand. The night was cool and the stars twinkled brightly above us. I could feel the tension gradually lifting, but I still couldn't ignore the nagging doubts that clouded my mind. "Do you think we can really make this work?" I asked, turning to face her. "I mean, can we truly heal from everything that's happened?" Her eyes filled with emotion, and she took a moment before responding. "I want to believe we can. I'm committed to doing the work if you are. I know I've hurt you and I don't want to keep bringing that pain back up, but I need you to be open with me too." "I will be," I promised. "But it's going to take time. I can't just flip a switch and pretend everything's okay. I need to feel safe again." "I understand," she said, squeezing my hand. "I'll be patient. I'll show you that I'm serious about changing. Beyond the therapy, I want to rebuild the trust. I'm here for the long haul." We continued walking, and as we talked openly about our fears and hopes, I could feel the weight in my chest starting to lift. It was still a long road ahead, but for the first time, I felt like we were moving forward together. In the following weeks, we both committed to our therapy sessions and made a conscious effort to reconnect. I started to share more of my feelings, while Sarah worked on opening herself up. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt that crept in, but we began to carve out a new path for ourselves. However, just when I thought we were making progress, I received a text message that almost shattered everything. I was at work when I saw the notification from an unknown number. My heart raced as I opened it. "Hey, it's Jess. I need to talk to you about Sarah. Please call me." Panic surged through me, and for a moment I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. Sarah's affair had been with Jess, the same person whose text had sparked our confrontation. I could feel my stomach drop as I debated whether I should respond. I wanted to ignore it, but my curiosity was overpowering. After a deep breath, I decided to call her back. "What do you want?" I asked as Jess answered, trying to keep my composure. "I didn't want to reach out like this, but I felt it was important. I know Sarah is trying to fix things, but you need to know that she hasn't been completely honest about everything," Jess said, her voice steady but cautious. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've seen her since the affair. I didn't realize how serious things were between you two. She told me she was unhappy. I thought it was just a fling, but it wasn't just that. There's more going on. I thought you should know," Jess explained. My mind was racing as I tried to process her words. "What more?" I demanded, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal boiling inside me. "She's been talking to me about her feelings, about how she didn't feel wanted or valued. I think she's still struggling with some of those emotions, and maybe things aren't as healed as you think." The conversation felt like a punch in the gut. I had been trying to rebuild our relationship, and now it felt like the ground was falling out from beneath me. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because I think you deserve to know the truth. I don't want to be the other woman and I don't want to hurt you. But if she's still struggling, it's important to address it. I care about her, but I also care about you. I just wanted you to have the opportunity to talk to her about it," Jess said. The knot in my stomach tightened as I hung up the phone, feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and heartache. I was back at square one, questioning everything I thought I had rebuilt with Sarah. Would she be honest with me about her feelings, or was this just another layer of betrayal? As I drove home that evening, I felt the walls closing in again. I had to confront Sarah once more, but this time I would not hold back. I needed to know what was happening in her heart, and I would fight for the truth. I was determined to figure out if we could truly move forward together or if it was time to walk away for good. When I got home that night, the air felt thick with tension. I knew I had to confront Sarah again, but with what Jess had told me, I felt like I was stepping onto a battlefield. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch, a book resting unread on her lap. She looked up at me, and I could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. I had warned her about my emotions and how fragile everything still felt, but I also sensed an underlying anxiety. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "How was your day?" "Not great," I replied, my heart racing. "We need to talk, Sarah, it's serious." Her expression shifted, the hopeful look replaced by concern. "What's wrong?" "I got a message today from Jess," I began, watching as her face paled. "She said you've been talking to her about your feelings and there's more going on than you've told me." "Jess, why would you be talking to her?" She looked genuinely shocked. "I thought you had cut ties with that part of my life." "I did, but she reached out to me. She said you hadn't been completely honest about your feelings." I continued, trying to keep my tone even but feeling the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Is that true?" She hesitated, her eyes dropping to the floor. I didn't mean to go back to her. It's just that after everything, I thought I could figure things out without dragging you into it again. I thought I could handle it." "Handle what?" I pressed, my heart racing. "You told me you wanted to work on us. How can we do that if you're still harboring unresolved feelings? You can't shut me out and expect me to trust you." "I wasn't trying to shut you out," she exclaimed, her voice rising. "I was just trying to figure out how to be better without putting more pressure on you." I took a deep breath, trying to maintain control over my emotions. "But instead, you're just pushing me away. I need to know if you genuinely want to fix this, but it feels like there are still secrets between us. You can't keep holding on to this." "What do you want me to say?" Sarah replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I'm scared, okay? I don't want to go back to where we were, but I also don't want to lose you again. It's hard to let go of the comfort I had with Jess. I thought it was just a fling, but it turned into something more complicated." "It's complicated because you made it complicated. You have to choose. Do you want to fight for us or keep holding on to her?" The words shot out of me like arrows, piercing through the fragile atmosphere of our home. "I want to fight for us," she insisted, tears pooling in her eyes. "But I don't know how. I'm trying to figure out how to be the person you need me to be while also dealing with my own demons. I thought talking to Jess would help me understand what I wanted, but now I see it was just a mistake." The pain in her voice resonated with me, but I was still grappling with the consequences of her actions. "You need to be completely honest with me, Sarah. I can't keep doing this if we're still harboring secrets. I deserve to know what you truly want." "I want you, I really do," she replied urgently, "but I need to be sure of my feelings first. I didn't mean to put you through this. I just thought I could handle it on my own, but it's so much harder than I expected." I felt my chest tighten as she spoke. "So what now?" I asked, my voice softer this time. "How do we move forward from here?" "I think we need to take a step back," she said, wiping away her tears. "Not in the sense of separation, but in giving each other space to figure out our emotions. I'm not asking for a divorce or to end things. I just need time." I finished for her, feeling a mix of sadness and resonance. "I understand that, but I can't wait forever. I need to know that you're fully committed to fixing this." "I am," she said, her eyes pleading with sincerity. "I just need to do some introspection, and I want to work through it with you. But if I'm not ready, it wouldn't be fair to you or to us." As I looked at her, I realized that while I was angry, I could also see her vulnerability. She was terrified of losing me, and for the first time I sensed she was willing to fight for us without forcing it. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "Let's take this one day at a time, but we have to be clear about our boundaries. We can't keep going in circles. I want to give us a fair chance, but it's going to take work from both of us." "I can do that," she replied, hope creeping back into her voice. "And I promise to be open and honest with you. No more secrets. I want to rebuild your trust." "Then let's start fresh," I said, feeling a weight lift off my chest. "We can work through this, but we have to be honest about what we want." In the weeks that followed, we focused on rebuilding that connection while giving each other space to grow. We engaged in open conversations, each therapy session peeling back layers of our emotional armor. I started to see glimpses of the Sarah I had fallen in love with, the one who cared deeply and wanted to make things work. Through this journey, I realized that forgiveness wouldn't always mean forgetting. It would involve learning together, understanding each other's struggles, and rebuilding trust from the ground up. As we walked this path together, I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's about how you confront the challenges that life throws at you. We were still learning, still navigating, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope for our future. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but I was committed to the process and ready to embrace whatever came next. This experience had taught me that relationships are messy and imperfect, but with patience, understanding, and love, they could also be incredibly rewarding. With that realization, I took a deep breath, ready to face the next chapter of our lives together, hopeful for what the future might bring.